Hi again, guys, and welcome to a actual episode of Beards and Cars with a beard in the video for a change. Now, I do occasionally do these videos on cam instead of, from the computer, and as you can see, this is why the sound is a bit different. It's not exactly ideal for holding, but due to the placement of the desk and everything, it's probably better if I hold the mic. If it's over here, you can't really hear it that well. Now, this particular episode, as you saw from the title and saw from the thumbnail, is a bit different, and it actually ties into an episode of Beards and Cars that I did quite a while ago now, probably at least 20 episodes back or so, where I talked about the fact that I'd written a book. And I actually self-published that book through my Patreon, where it's still available. But this is the next step, because not only have I actually officially published my first book, Buddy, but I've actually published a second one as well. And that is what I wanted to talk about in this particular video. For those of you who don't know, I do love to write as well. And the two books in particular are Buddy, as I said, and also my second new book, Spore. Now, I wanted to use this video to give you a quick rundown for those who weren't aware of my writing. Basically what they're about, if it sounds like it's something that you would be into, and also if you are interested in it, how you can get them. Because you don't just have to buy a book, for instance. There are alternative ways of reading it, of hearing it, of downloading it, etc. So first of all, to talk about Buddy. Buddy is the first book, a novelette, technically based on its length, which I actually finished. Because I've been writing stories all my life. I've always loved to, but I always had issues with finishing them. I never actually finished the stories because I would have a flow going and then it just, I don't know, it would just peter out. And I figured out the reason why. It was because I'm a short story writer. And the ideas that I like to write about don't need to be like 300, 400, 500 pages. You can get the idea across much more quickly than that. And that was what happened with Buddy. Now, Buddy, as far as the story goes, and you can actually hear me reading some of it in that other episode where I first published this, digital copy only. I'll put a link to that actually in the description if you want to hear the excerpt from it. But the idea behind this story is it revolves around a young boy named Lucas, who's about 10 years old or so, who's bullied every day at school. And one day on the way home from school, he meets a stranger. And this stranger offers to help Lucas deal with his bullies in some pretty extreme ways. And the book and the story deals with the ramifications for Lucas in particular of what that would do. And that's the basic idea behind it. I would categorize it as a coming-of-age horror with some psychological elements. So that was my first story. This one, I would say, is more of a thoughtful piece where I wanted it to be something where I would strongly recommend reading it twice because you get a lot more out of it the second time. Trust me on that. And of course, I can't explain why because that would spoil stuff that's in there. But if you read it, and those who have read it already, such as my Patreon sponsors, you know what I mean by that. Now, the second book, which I wrote much more recently, is Spore. And this one I've kept much more quiet here on the channel because some of you have probably seen that I posted Buddy in the community post section, etc. But this one is much more recent because I finally received this paperback proof. Now, Spore is a totally different story to Buddy. Spore is a shorter story. Buddy is about 50 pages. This is about 30 pages. So it's still like a borderline novelette. Some would call it a short story. Technically, it's more of a novelette. And it's my love letter to some of my favorite movies, including John Carpenter's The Thing, Splinter, The Blob, Harbinger Down, various other ones like that. There are some super obscure ones which aren't quite as good, but you get the idea. It's a monster story, a straight-up creature feature, and it revolves around a young girl who is attending a illegal rave in the countryside, who ends up waking up in the back of a police car. And then she starts being hunted by something from the woods and has to survive. And if that sounds familiar, then that's why. It's designed, as I said, to pay homage to those kind of The Thing and Splinter, in particular, those two kind of stories. But I loved writing this one. I wrote this in 4 nights, and I loved every second of it. It's fast-paced. It's not anything like Buddy. Completely different characters, completely different story, completely different style even. This one's just straight up creature feature horror. And if you're a fan of those kind of movies, then I guarantee you'll like this. It's got a pretty original creature, I would say, based on other things that I've read and watched, and I've watched a lot of those kind of movies. And the pacing, as I said, is much quicker than Buddy. Buddy is more thoughtful. It deals with feelings and emotions more, whereas this one, you don't have the chance to deal with emotions that much, because Buddy, for instance, takes place over the course of about a week within the story time, whereas Spore takes place over one night. So it's very, very fast-paced. Now, as far as writing more, for instance, like a third one, I have been asked by a couple of people, will I write a third one to like make an unofficial but official trilogy, if you will, because these two stories aren't connected. Yes, I would definitely be open to writing a third one. But as with these two, I want the right inspiration to be there. Because with these two, the flow was just perfect. Buddy, I wrote in 7 nights, or 6 nights actually. As I said, I wrote Spore in 4 nights. And when I get an idea that is fully fleshed out and I know exactly what I want it to be, it never takes me very long to do it. It's always the ideas that I don't fully flesh out that don't tend to get finished. So that's what I want to do. I want to keep the streak alive. If I do have a third idea that I really love, to keep it in this same kind of vein. And I think that the advantage of having genre styles which are similar but so different at the same time, with the only commonalities being elements of horror, it appeals to a wider audience as well, while simultaneously having my style of writing. Now, speaking of my style of writing, I also wanted to use part of this episode to talk to those of you who are also interested in writing yourself, because some of the things that I found beneficial for me when writing were realizing what kind of writer I was. I already mentioned the fact, for instance, that I'm not a regular novel writer. I'm a short story and a novelette writer in particular because my ideas just don't need, as I mentioned, huge books to get across. They can be told more quickly than that. It's just in and out, get the job done, you know what you're dealing with, etc. Now, as far as actually visualizing the story, getting it done, I know a lot of you guys have the same issues as I do with actually finishing something once you start writing it. And that was something which I had for many years. The main piece of advice that I would give you about that is to do 2 things. One of them is very personal to me, so it might not work for you. And the other one is much more general. Now, the more general one is, what is it? The more general one is to have your idea fully fleshed out, to know what the beginning and the end, at least, are going to be, and then don't try to overstretch the middle, because that's where the problems will often arise, trying to have too much filler that just isn't necessary. The second thing, which, as I said, is very personal to me and I found very beneficial, is to actually do the exact opposite of what you would usually see from a story. Usually you'll see a book adapted into a film or into a TV series or into a web series, whatever. I actually do things the opposite way. I like to imagine my stories as movies first, and then if it looks good in my mind, if it would actually work as a movie, then I write it. Which sounds kind of like a back-to-front way of doing things, but I actually find that it really works well for me. So you could always try that out for yourself and see if it works for you. I mean, it's worth a shot if you are a fan of writing, and I find that visualizing something, how it would look on screen, actually helps me to write about it better. And I'm not sure if that's a method that others use. Doubtless some people do, but it's not something that I hear talked about that much. Now, as far as how you can get these, if you are interested, both of these are published through Amazon, both on the Amazon regular store and the Kindle store, because you can get them both as ebooks. Now, I've put all the links in the description for either of them. The paperback of Buddy is £4.99, and the paperback of Spore is $3.99. The Kindle versions of both are $1.99 each, but if you buy the paperback, you get the Kindle for free. So obviously the better value one, and the one that I would actually recommend, is the paperback, because I actually, funnily enough, don't get as much royalty if you buy the paperback. So it's not like I'm saying that because I want more money. I would actually recommend this because I think it's just cooler to have the physical book. I think it's just that much more tangible. I put a lot of effort into the artwork of the books, so I don't know, it's just, maybe it's just me as the creator, but I like having a physical copy. So, like I said, it's not about the money. That's not why I'm recommending the paperback, because although they cost more, I actually get less royalties from the paperback than I do from the Kindle. And because you get the Kindle for free, because I opted for that for you guys, it's worse for me. But I'd still recommend it because the book is the way that I'm more proud of. And I don't know, it's just, it's more old-fashioned, but in a good way, kind of like a comic book. You don't want to digitally read a comic, you want the physical thing. It's just better with some things, and this, I would say, is one of them. Now, as I said, I've put all the links down below, but the other ways that you can actually access these books, there are a couple of exclusives. Now, the main exclusive way that you can access Buddy at the moment, and I'm going to follow up with Spore as well, is I've actually read aloud the complete audiobook for Buddy, which is 55 minutes long, read, of course, by myself, and it's here on YouTube. But you can only access it if you are a channel sponsor. Now, you can check out the channel sponsor. It's literally right below this video. It says join down here. And if you click that, it shows you the perks you get. And the perks are very similar to my Patreon. They're not exactly the same because the price point isn't the same. But for instance, on Patreon, I have 4 different tiers. There's $1, $5, $10, and $20. And the perks associated with the channel are exactly the same as the $5 on Patreon. So technically speaking, it is a little bit different because it's pounds instead of dollars, but instead of rounding around and all that, I've just had it as that level. So technically speaking, I think if you choose to support the channel on Patreon, it works out a little bit cheaper than if you support the channel here on YouTube. Of course, either way works for me. I don't really mind, and you get the same perks either way. And basically what that means is, I'm trying to recall what the perks are, but for joining the channel or for the $5 tier on Patreon, whichever one you choose, because they're the same, as I said, you get lifetime access to the audiobook of, it's going to be both of them, but I just haven't recorded Spore yet. So lifetime access to my audiobooks here on YouTube for you to listen to. It's also written on the screen so you can follow along if you want to. You also get your name in the credits of every video that I produce. Again, if you click on the description of this video and scroll to the bottom, you can see a load of names there of people who support the channel. And even if you support the channel and then stop, your name is still there. There are guys and girls down there who have supported the channel who are not around anymore, but their names are still there because if you've ever supported the channel, you will always be in the description. That's the way I do things. So that is one perk. You get your name as a producer. You also get access to these, as I said. You actually get a digital copy in your email as well as a PDF, so you can just read it if you want to instead of listening to it. And what was the other perk? Oh yes, you get access to the exclusive sponsors lounge on the Discord server as well. So anyone can join the Discord. Again, the link is down below. But to get into the sub forum on there, if you will, of the sponsors only, that's how you do that. And that's pretty much it as far as the sponsorship incentives go. Now, of course, there are higher tiers on Patreon which don't have anything to do with the books. For instance, the $10 tier, you can actually work with me every month to create a video. And we haven't done that in a few months with the guys who are supporting at that level and above, but that was mainly because their schedules are very busy, of course. I'm not the only one who's working, they are as well. But yeah, that's what you get for the $10. And then the $20, which is the VIP tier, you get the digital copy of both books, you get access to both of the audiobooks, you get your name in the credits, you get the sponsors Discord lounge, you get a free HSG t-shirt from either TeePublic or Teespring. And you can see the Teespring clothing down below. And you get, what else? The one-to-one video with me every month as well. And I think there was something else that I can't recall. But again, you can click on the link down below and look at Patreon anyway. You don't have to pay anything and you don't have to sign up to read the stuff. You can read it all either way, just to peruse, if you will. So yeah, that's why I wanted to do this vid, to kind of do a mini advertising campaign in my own kind of way for my books. I'm really proud of these. I love both of the stories. And I want to thank you guys who have already read it, such as my Patreon supporters. I've had great feedback. I know that you loved it. because you said as much. And yeah, here's hoping, personally at least, that I think up an idea for a third one, just to kind of even it out to a trilogy. So yeah, maybe more will come of this in the future, because I originally envisioned these as short films rather than short stories, and as I said, they ended up as books instead. But yeah, we'll see. We'll see how it works out. So overall, that's it for this particular installment of Beards and Cars, with 100% more beard than is usually involved. And of course, if you've already read the book, I hope you enjoyed it. If you are thinking about it or just supporting the channel at all, then of course that's much appreciated, no matter what level you choose. Because even people who support at the $1 tier, it makes a difference. Because as I've said here on the channel, I've never tried to make viral videos. That's never what I've tried to do, because viral videos do not a YouTuber make. You need to have consistent views. And in a similar way, I'm not looking for everyone to donate $20 or more. That's just unrealistic. Of course not. Which is why the goal on my Patreon page is to have 1,000 people donating $1 a month. Because if even those people did that and there were no people at the other levels, that would mean that I could put so much more into YouTube. Quality of equipment increase, editing software, even producing videos that I simply can't afford to do right now, not because of the editing, but because of just arranging what would be involved in the video is way beyond what I can currently do. So it's not just a case of like paying someone like an income. It really is putting back into the channel, which is why I call my sponsors part of the HSG team. You're not just a sponsor, you are a producer here on the channel. You make the channel what it is. And those people who have already supported the channel have done just that. Stuff like this, tangible things that you've put into the channel, in effect. You are making the channel better all the time. So again, thank you to those who already have supported in the past, maybe don't anymore for various reasons, those who still do, those who join, those who are thinking about it even, those who even do stuff like buying a t-shirt or a hoodie or a book. It all makes a difference and it all supports the channel, because this channel, my second channel, Sledgehammer Movies, it's all part of this same community in one way or another. So ultimately, that's it for this episode. Thank you for your support. And of course, hope you enjoy the books. But for now, as always, thanks for watching.